We get Talthybius. Now, Talthybius, now we get the Greek come in, a Greek man come in, and of course, he's really their enemy. But what we find, Talthybius is quite a complicated character in that I don't want you just to interpret him as part of the nastiness of the Greek army and the way that we've heard about the Greeks being spoken to about by Poseidon and Athene at the beginning. So Talthybius, remember what I said to you at the beginning, he offers us, of course, here's another character. If you've got a question on integrity, Hecuba is a woman of integrity, and so too is Talthybius, I think. Because Talthybius, and I've read this and I think I watched something on it recently as well, Talthybius is loyal to the Greek cause. Okay, so he's loyal to Menelaus. He's loyal to what needed to happen. So, for example, Astyanax, he made sure that he was killed, which is Terra was a little baby, right? Made sure he was killed so that there wasn't an heir to the throne around to come back and seek vengeance in when he's older and throw down the Greeks to avenge for everything that happened in Troy. So he did the right thing by the Greeks. Okay, he was loyal to their cause, but in his dealings with the women, he was quite human. He showed them humanity. He wasn't ruthless and cruel like we hear about for the other rapes and things that occurred in the text. So for him, Euripides is offering an interpretation of him is that Euripides is offering us a human soldier, I guess, a more humane soldier, to say that war, you don't have to act like an animal in war, that there are other ways. Okay, so Talthybius, I'll just give you my points on him now. I want you to think about him, and that's why that reading I've given you is important for Talthybius. So I want you to think about him in this way. I'll just write it on the screen so you can have a look at it later on as well. The hardest thing, I think, writing on this text is making sure you spell all the characters' names correctly as well. Okay, make sure you get that right. So just some points on him. He's committed to the Greeks and his duty to them, but he also acts humanely when directing the Trojan women who would become slaves, of course. And in that instance, one interpretation of that is he intends to relieve the anxiety of the women. Now, of course, the other lens you could put on that, or the other interpretation you could get from that, is he does that so his job's easier. He does that so that the women don't create hell for him. He doesn't have to fight them, that they're more likely to go along with him. So, for example, he allows for Astyanax's proper burial. Indeed, that was under Hector's shield, his father's shield, which is an important symbol in the play. And that in those times, being buried properly and being sent off to the gods as a gift and all that sort of thing was hugely important. And that's part of that idea that the Trojans died honourably, okay, that they could bury theirs and send them off to the gods in the right way. So he's an interesting character to unpack. And I think he's worth spending a good couple of hours on researching, just so that you get different interpretations of him. Okay, so I'm really, really well aware that it could be a strategy just to help his job and to make his life easier. But I think a nicer way to look at him is, of course, is that he is human and that he's trying to do the right thing by the women. Does anyone have any opinions on Talthybius? Does anyone want to add something to what I just said then on him? Just write it in the chat if you do. I'll take your silence as no. I've just put some really good quotes for him on, and I'll give them to you later, but they're on 34, 35, 36. There's some really good quotes for us there. Okay, so Talthybius, I want you to get on page 14, a good description of him to use as a quote is just under his, where it says, enter Talthybius with the guards, and then as his third line, as officer in charge of negotiations or outlining our proposals. Okay, well, of course, they're not proposals, they're going to be directions. But again, the diplomacy that he has, the diplomatic language he uses. And then he talks about allocating their masters and so on and so forth there. Okay, then on page 15, this is that Cassandra's valued as a woman because she was a virgin, okay? And this is where Talthybius says at the top of page 15, Agamemnon made a special note of her and took her for himself. And then go down 2, 3, 5, 6 lines to Talthybius when he says, he wants her because she's sacred. He shot through with lust. Now, back in the day in classical Greece, that idea of being a virgin and honour and integrity of a woman was highly sought after and, of course, highly attractive. And given that Cassandra was a virgin, although raped by Ajax, of course, Agamemnon wants her as one of the prized possessions because she is a virgin, supposedly. I guess the other way of looking at that too is, if he doesn't know that she's being raped by Ajax and isn't a virgin, there's kind of some irony, some justice in that he didn't get what he thought he was getting, that his prize was already destroyed. Depends how you want to look at the text, of course. Okay, and then, of course, the very bottom on page 15, Talthybius knows that Polyxena, one of Hecuba's children, and Hecuba had heaps of children, by the way, but one of her children was dead. Rather than come out and say, your daughter's dead, she's being murdered or whatever, he says in his final lines on this page on 15, she's to serve Achilles at his tomb. And, of course, she's trying to protect Hecuba there from the truth. So he's not lying to her. This is, language of diplomacy. He's not lying to her, but he's not being upfront either. Again, I think that's kind of done in kindness. I don't think it's done out of cruelty. Okay, then across to page 16. Okay, Bree, in my class we talked about how Talthybius didn't say to Hecuba that Polyxena dies. Absolutely. And use that, Bree, as an example of his humanity and his integrity. And in some ways, he's one of the original diplomats. So he shows care with the Polyxena part. Listen, I don't think there's anything stopping, and I've said this to my students at my school are studying this text. I don't think there's anything stopping VCAA from asking a question about Talthybius and what he represents, or trying to pit Talthybius against the stereotype of the Greek barbarians and what they did. I think you could actually have a whole essay on him. So please don't discredit everything we're saying here or think it's not necessary. But Bree, absolutely. So diplomatic language. Oops, I shouldn't say care for Polyxena there, or it's care for Hecuba. It's a really good example to use. Thanks, Bree, for that. You're perfect.